Oh, hi everybody, Eddie here. Welcome again to the third webinar on strategic marketing units. Today we are going to discuss the strategies for new market entry, which is quite strategic for any company's decision. And in saying that, to give you a bit of illustration, if we make a mistake in terms of making a wrong decision to enter a market, then the exit strategy may be costly or painful for the organization. Therefore, a number of tools have been developed to help us making a good decision. At least we have some background to make decision why we want to compete in certain markets and ignore the other markets. Okay. Right. So in the previous module, we discussed the industry attractiveness using portal five forces, for instance, to help us understanding the level of industry's attractiveness. Okay. And today's agenda actually covers the product life cycle, pioneer and follower strategies, and 6 strategies of new products. Okay. Right. So they are the ones that we are going to discuss, basically with the focus on the understanding the marketing strategies and programs for developing the markets and offerings. Okay. And there's some issues in here that we need to be aware of. The first one is the competitive advantage. Being the pioneer helps us to gain the competitive advantage. But it also carries certain risks, being the pioneer of the industry. Okay, so what is a competitive advantage? Well, simply, competitive advantage is defined as the ability of the company to offer a cheaper price with the same benefit or more benefit to justify higher price. So the company is able to manage this. Okay, remember, in capability is a key issue when it comes to analyzing the company's business or marketing strategy. Okay, and being the first also carries some risks. We need to ensure that we keep maintaining ourselves to lead the industry. Otherwise, after we develop the industry, we develop the category, the new product category, someone else might take over from us. Okay, so yes, of course, it opens a new opportunity for us when it comes to being the pioneer. Okay, we also carry the investment risks. Okay, what about if the initiative that we launched to the market fail? It doesn't meet the customer's needs. So we are the one that will carry the financial risks. Okay, think about you as an innovator, for instance. Okay, you come up with the idea to innovate in the market. You launch it, and if it doesn't meet the customer's need, that's it, and you carry the risks. Okay, including financial risk, your time, your effort, your energy. Okay, but if you're successful, then you have the opportunity to dominate the market. You have the opportunity to lead with your market share. Okay, so think about electric car that Elon Musk launched, the Tesla, for instance, right? A new category. He built a new category. Okay, they built a new category in there. Okay, so they have the risks, but they also have the opportunity to lead the market. Okay, and we also need to think about being a follower, or we also need to think about someone else who may become the follower in our product category. Okay, right. So the question for us in terms of being the pioneer or being the follower is juggling which one's better. Okay, in terms of costs and risks of being the pioneer or being the follower. Okay, well, companies would normally look at the resources that they have. Okay, look at they research their own internal resources. What do we have here? Can we lead this or not? Okay, and more importantly is for them to understand whether the innovation that they bring to the market meets the customer's needs. Okay, so the companies would normally look at three strategic questions when it comes to being the pioneer in that industry. The first question is whether it is whether the product is feasible, okay, or product feasibility, okay. In this instance, they are asking the question whether they can make it. Can we make it or not? Can we make it or not? The second one is market feasibility. Okay. In this instance, the company is asking themselves in terms of, do people want to buy it or not? Do people want to buy it or not? Okay. Want to buy it or not? Okay. So this is a question of meeting the customer's need from marketing perspective. And the third one is economic feasibility. Okay. Can we make it? Can we make it at the cost, okay, that is profitable for us? Okay, so yes, we can make it. We have the technologies, we have the resources to make it, we have the capabilities to make it. We have a team who has the expertise to make it. Okay, and we have investigated. Our marketing team has done a number of research that shows the product is needed by the customers. Customers want it. Okay. The next question that we can't forget is whether we can make profit or not. Can we make it at the? Can we make this product at the cost that gives us profit? All right. Otherwise, well, it won't fly. Okay. So there are a number of things that we also need to consider from the from being the pioneer. Okay. From the innovation strategy perspective. All right. Well, this is a quote from Steve Jobs. I believe you are aware of, you all familiar with Steve Jobs, and you can also look at a number of innovators such as Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, or Larry Page and Sergey Brin with Google that they founded some time ago. Okay. So look at what they've done in terms of being the pioneer in the industry. Okay, so being the pioneer in the industry also requires you to be the innovator. Okay, to innovate in that industry. Okay, well, you may raise a question here. We may have a question here. Okay, what is innovation? All right. Well, innovation is actually about the innovation is actually about the successful translation of an idea into product and into product, service, or process. All right. So it is a successful implementation of a new idea into product, service, or process, or business process, or customer's process, for instance. Okay. In other words, innovation is actually about not only about ID. If we only talk about ID as innovation, then it is not enough. To become an innovation, the ID has to have the commercial value, or in other words, those like mathematical symbols. Innovations actually ID multiplied by commercialization. Okay, so if we know how to commercialize it, but we don't have the ID, it is not innovation. Okay, they both have to come together as a package. Okay, we have the ID and we know how to commercialize it, and it has commercial value. Customers need it. Okay, not only ID, but customers need it. Okay, so that we can commercialize it with our resources. All right. So hopefully that gives us a clear idea in terms of what we mean by innovation. All right. Number of industries, a number of examples that the industries have, a number of examples that the industries or business history has provided us. And if I can take you to a larger or a broader perspective, if you like, innovators are always needed in our economic system, okay, to drive the economic growth. In fact, during the economic hardship, the innovators who are basically the entrepreneurs drive the economic growth. Microsoft, for instance, was launched by Bill Gates during the economic, during the oil crisis, for instance, okay? And McDonald's, for instance, the first outlet was launched by Ray Kroc when the economy was also facing difficulties at that time. Okay, so yes, we do need innovators, we do need entrepreneurs, and then you may ask the next question, okay, what is this entrepreneur and what is this innovator? Well, look, innovation, entrepreneurship, and creativity are basically one package, okay? So these three concepts, entrepreneurship, innovation, and creativity, have become one package. They are linked together, right? As a package. So if you innovate, you basically you take it to the next level, you commercialize it, you are basically the entrepreneur, right? And businesses also require us to be an entrepreneur, or we call it as intrapreneur. Okay, so taking you to the next level from this subject, from strategic marketing perspective, actually we try to give you the insight that you also need to drive the innovation process in the business. Okay. All right. So now let's briefly discuss about product life cycle. I believe everybody is familiar with the term product life cycle. Just briefly, product life cycle is actually about the cycle of product based on sales and profit, actually. So it's not only about sales history, but also profitability of the product throughout the entire life of the product, okay? We adopt the 5 stages. Some authors suggest 4 stages, but the 5 stages also include the development stage, where the product is still in development, okay? Now, the key point about the product life cycle is basically the situation that is different if we compare one stage to the other stage. Because it has different situation, remember, when it comes to writing a marketing strategy, the first thing that we want to analyze is the situation. You do the brand audit, you do the marketing analysis, you do the market situation analysis, market trends analysis. That is part of the first thing that we need to do when it comes to writing a marketing strategy or business strategy or any strategy that you write, okay? So the situation is different, therefore it drives a different objective, okay? In the case of introduction, for instance, we just introduced the product to the market, therefore we the sales is still low. Why is that? Because from situation analysis perspective, the customers are not aware of the product yet. Therefore, the objective in here is to raise the awareness and also to stimulate trial. How do we get there? We normally, from product perspective, we normally launch the original item, original version, and then we stimulate the awareness and trial through advertising promotional campaign. Okay, going forward to the growth stage, our sales rise rapidly. And remember, when our sales rise rapidly, what does it mean? Well, competitors will look into that category as well. The competitors will ask themselves, why don't we participate in that product category? All right. So what does it mean? Well, the objectives that we have will change because the situation that has also changed. Okay. So the objective will become maximizing our market share. How do we get there? We may, from product management perspective, we may expand the product to the next level or upgrade our product if it is in consumer electronic, like the guys at Apple do, basically. Okay, in leading the pioneership, in becoming the pioneer in that industry. So they launched the next generation of the iPhone or iPad, for instance, okay, to the next level. All right, and from distribution perspective, we expand the distribution. Okay, we expand the distribution to help us dominating the market. Okay, and the market becomes mature. Right, what it means is basically we have lots of competitors who can establish their own position in the market. That's the reason why if you look at the maturity stage, our sales growth is flattening. Okay, so why is that? Again, we share the pie, we share the industry, we share product category with our competitors. If you look at industries in Australia or any other developed economies, a lot of them are basically in maturity stage. We have lots of competitors that can establish their position in the market. Okay, you name it. You have laptop category, you have biscuit category, snack category, chocolate category. For instance, they are in maturity stage. Okay, where competitors, where all players have established their position in the market. They have their own customers. Okay. So what does it mean? From a market objective perspective, we need to ensure that we can maximize our profit while defending our market share, right? How do you do that? Well, we may expand the product to the next level, and at the same time, we try to beat our competitors' prices as well from pricing strategy perspective, and from distribution perspective, we will push our distribution to be more intensive, and our advertising campaign would not only focus on the key benefits to show that we are different, we are unique to the others, so please come to us. That's the key message from a campaign perspective. And then we come to what we call as the declining stage of our life cycle, which is basically about losing the customer. So the industry is in declining stage, therefore the industry's volume will decline because customers find another way to fulfill their needs. Okay, so they switch to different product, so they may give up their product and switch to a different product category. Okay, so what will happen in what is the situation here, right, in the declining stage? Well, normally only the first 2 or 3 players survive in that product category or in that industry, if you like, in the broader sense. Why is that? Because they normally have the economies of scale, so they can be efficient in running their operations, so they can survive in that industry. All right, the other players would normally exit from that category. Now, this also depends on whether the industry is filled up by players who only have a single industry to compete. Okay, if that is the case, then we expect to have price war in that industry because everyone will not give up to exit the category, especially if divesting the investment is more expensive than competing through price war. Okay, so that's what will happen. Okay, so here we have 2 options. If we are the market leader, okay, we want to maintain in that industry. If we are not the market leader, then we have the options whether it is the only product that we have. If it is the only product that we have, then we may be involved in the price war with the other guys or more aggressive promotional campaign. Okay, so assuming that we have a decent volume in there, we want to maintain that volume. So what the objective that we want to achieve revolves around maintaining our profit, maximizing our profits, basically, or milking the product for profit, so we can use it for investment in a different product category. Okay, how do we do that? Well, we may need to simplify our product or simplify our offering to save the costs so we can make profit. So it doesn't mean that we don't involve product development activities in this instance, right? From pricing perspective, we normally undercut our competitors, so we can still maintain our healthy volume in there. Okay, and from distribution perspective, we may reduce that distribution, our distribution level, because not all customers can accept it anymore. And from promotion perspective, we reduce it to bare minimum. Okay, so that's basically the product life cycle in a nutshell. So if we look at the diagram, that may look something like this. So there you go. We show the sales and profit here over the life of the product. Okay. You may also raise a question. What do we do if we have achieved a maturity? Well, marketers would normally make a decision whether this product is quite strategic and the customer's need is still healthy. If so, they may need to relaunch it, right? So that is actually helping us to understand why some product survives, or some brands, if you like, to be more precise, survives 50 years, 100 years, and so on and so forth, right? So they relaunch the brand to make it relevant, to keep making it relevant in the customer's mind. Okay, so that is actually our role, to ensure that our brand still relevant in the customer's life. Okay. Now this one here is broadly speaking about the marketing mix in each category, right? Please go through it yourself, and I'm not going to present it now. And that's a brief summary in terms of product life cycle. Now, remember, product life cycle is actually a guideline for us, but it is not kind of 10 commandments in our Bible. So there's some limitations as well. Okay, so basically, it helps us to understand the strategies that we can make, that we can develop, but it is on the assumption based on the market situation in each category. Now, in saying that, it may not be that accurate. You also need to look at the real situation, aside from looking at your product life cycle. For instance, if you look at here, when we introduce the product, people recommend us to use the cost plus strategy from pricing plus strategy. It may not be suitable for your case, for your industry. Then you need to make a decision whether it is still possible or not. Some product categories may in fact use price scheming strategy. If you look at consumer electronics, Apple, for instance, normally adopt that kind of strategy. Okay, right. All right, so the six strategies of new products, new to the world, new product line, additions. All right, so we add to the product line, improve it, repositioning it, or reposition it, or cost reductions. Right. So there are the six strategies here, according to the degree of newness. Okay, here we have the newness, and here we to the company, and here we have the newness to the market. Okay, and you can see here a bit of percentage based on some studies here. Okay. All right, and the next thing I'd like to discuss with you briefly is about the follower strategy. We have discussed the pioneer strategy, basically, so being the first choice, but again, being the pioneer strategy, you are the innovator. You have also some risks, and of course, you will also benefit a lot if you are successful. And being the pioneer, being the follower, you need to analyze the pioneers' problems, basically, when they start the market. Okay, so through your creative thinking, okay, you need to find what are the other issues that the customers have. Okay, so you may use certain creative thinking techniques such as attribute listing. So you list down attributes of the current competitors, and you think about how you can make it better. Okay, so for instance, using this technique, if you look at if you work for a consumer electronic, Samsung, for instance, for argument's sake, and you know that Apple launched iPhone, you can list down the attributes that that Apple has included in their iPhone products: touch screen, size of the screen, easy to navigate, the operating system, and so on and so forth. And you can think about how you can make it better. Okay, so in a broader sense, that is actually how the entrepreneurs and innovators actually drive the economic growth by introducing the what they call as a creative destruction. Okay, so they launch a new offering that meets the customer's needs better to drive the economic growth. All right, so that's taking you to the next level in our discussion. Okay, is it better to be a pioneer or a follower? Well, the main point is basically whether you have what it takes to be a pioneer, or you have what it takes to be a follower. It doesn't mean pioneer is always the best. Okay, it goes back to your capabilities. Okay, so this is a bit of guides in terms of being the pioneers and also being the followers, and being the late entrants. Okay, to any strategies that you adopt, that is fine actually. Whether you become the pioneer, you become the fast followers, okay, you become the late entrants. Okay. All right, so we discussed this in the targeting strategy last time. I'm not going to discuss that further. Okay, what I'm going to discuss next is actually oops. All right, the next thing I'd like to discuss with you is the brand diagnosis. Basically, remember, it is quite critical for us to diagnose our brand situation before we do anything. And just bear in mind that if you think that when we have problem, then you think, okay, let's advertise, let's spend advertising dollars more. Well, look, tell you what, it may not solve the problem, and you may dry up your resources, and you may be better off spending that resources to the other brand that is more promising for you. Okay, so the question is actually not about where you spend. Before you make that kind of decision, please do your market situation analysis that includes your brand diagnosis. Okay. All right, so this is a brief workshop that you can also go through yourself. Okay, so the brand diagnosis actually is like we go to a doctor, so we need to actually detect where the problems are. Okay, so when we understand the problem, that helps us to understand how we solve the problem. Okay, at the brand, this is basically showing us the brand development stages that helps us to understand a brief insights about the potential issues. Okay, awareness, trial, attitudes, adoption, and advocacy. Okay, so this is what we expect. Whether the customers become whether the customers are happy to give us recommendation or not. So this is kind of journey that the customers are taking, starting from the awareness. They try it, and they develop the certain attitude. They adopt, and we expect them to recommend us to their friends or their relatives. Okay, so again, in terms of questions, we can ask some strategic questions such as, is the market growing? Okay, in our brand diagnostic analysis, okay, how is the market doing? Okay, and how is our brand doing? Okay, yes, the market is growing. What about our own brand? Is our brand also growing or not? Okay, and how is the brand in the competition? Okay, how is our brand perceived in the competition? Okay, from technical data perspective like market share, how is our brand doing compared to our competitors? Okay, and we can also ask we can ask something deeper than that, such as the awareness of our brand, and the loyalty of our brand. Okay, so we can ask these four basic questions about the market and the brand in the competition. Okay, and we can also look at 4 or 5 forces in terms of the industry's attractiveness. That again helps us to understand whether we are competing in the right industry or not, from broader market perspective. Okay, whether our brand, we launch a brand that is competing in the right category or not. Okay, look at the positioning strategy, generic positioning, porous generic positioning, and competitive advantage. Have we got the a strong competitive advantage or not? Or if can we claim our competitive advantage to be very unique? Okay, that has become a sustainable competitive advantage, or someone else has done that better than us. Okay, so that is the strategic question that we also need to ask, and we also need to look at that from the SWOT analysis framework as well, whether we still have the strength that that we need to compete in that industry. Okay, all right. Again, if we go back to the brand development stages, we can use those framework as well to help us understanding the consumers of our brand. Okay, and that's the 4 or 5 forces, and also the competitive advantage. And yep, so that's basically the main points I'd like to discuss with you from brand diagnostic perspective, and which is basically helping us to understand whether our brand is healthy or not. Okay, our brand is healthy or not. All right. All right. The next thing that I'd like to discuss with you briefly is measuring the market opportunities. That includes the forecasting and market knowledge. Okay, so a few things in here that we try to achieve. I just want to bring some highlights to you, and that's the one that I'd like to discuss with you in the next part.